Less than 6 months ago, Jennifer Lopez put out an album and 2 movies about being in love with Ben Affleck. Last week, she filed for divorce. It was news that hit a lot of people hard in ways that honestly surprised me. Today on the podcast, what we get out of being so invested in celebrity relationships. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. If you don't mind, I think the place to start is here.
With you, it's paradise, and it was worth the wait. And baby, this is fate, yeah. Got me mad in love, like, ooh, you got me mad in love, I'll never get enough, ooh, forever's real with you.
With you, it was paradise, and it was worth the wait. That is Mad in Love by Jennifer Lopez. This is a song that came out this calendar year, the year that we're still in right now. It was on her album, This Is Me Now. This is an album that she put out alongside 2 films. One is a musical film, the other one's a documentary. And all of these, the album, the musical, the documentary, they're all about Jen trying to tell people, trying to tell us, trying to figure out how to communicate her deep love for Ben Affleck. So you can imagine my surprise when last week J-Lo filed for divorce on the 2-year anniversary of her wedding to Ben. You know, it's not necessarily shocking when people get divorced, but for some reason, the end of Bennifer 2.0 is hitting a lot of people hard. You hear these people doing the thing where they declare that love is dead. And I wonder if this love story is kind of an entry point into a couple of questions that I want to explore. One is what we expect from romance. And then 2, and maybe a bigger question, is what we expect from celebrity. What is our relationship to this institution? I'm diving into all of this today with Julianne Escobedo Shepherd and B. Quammie. B, Julianne, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
What's up, y'all? I'm excited to do this. Thank you for being here. Okay, B, I'm going to start with you. Look, the year is 2021, okay? We're still in the middle of the pandemic. And then suddenly the paparazzi photographed Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez on a yacht together. What's your reaction to those photos?
So, to borrow from Omarion, I will say that the icebox where my heart used to be melted, it melted a bit. It started to defrost a little bit. I was like, wow, love is back.
Yes.
You can reconnect.
To quote Omarion, yeah.
Exactly, right? I mean,
yeah.
It really hit me that, okay, here are these people who had such an infamous story like 20 years ago back to give us more. And I was intrigued. I was just intrigued. I was taken aback.
Yeah, it was kind of like the last thing that people expected, Julianne, the idea that, you know, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez would get back together. At this point, I would say, like, look, neither Ben or Jen are at the peak of their fame. Why do you think their reunion, those photos on the yacht, got all that public attention?
Well, I mean, I think that, first of all, it was the pandemic and we really needed something to root for. But
yes.
But I think that also, you know, we were ripe for this fairy tale idea of, like, you know, we're all sitting, you know, those of us with the privilege to sit at home during the pandemic were thinking about our exes often. And here it is materialized, like, you get back with the one who got away. So, like, obviously we were transfixed because wasn't a whole lot of other stuff going on that was positive.
Absolutely peak. I should call her moment. You know what I mean? Like, that just you don't get that kind of moment in public. And you get all the memes, right? You get sort of like, you get all the sort of construction of internet reaction to it. What do you remember about the reaction to them getting back together in 2021?
Oh, it was just, you know, like, they became the poster children for spinning the block successfully. You know, you come back around and you get back, you call that person that you used to, you know, have a little thing. And I think just feeding into, like, the internet life of it all through memes, they just keep us fed that way. That's just what we do. We, the public, like to create a story, even when there's one in front of us. So taking the memes of, you know, the 2 of them descending down the stairs of the yacht, and other memes of, you know, Ben smoking a cigarette, looking a little bit despondent, and people wondering what that means. Or like the video of them walking to the car and he opens the car door for her and he kind of slams it back, like, you know,
so exasperated.
We take those very exasperated. So it just feeds us to continue to, like, whether it's right or wrong, we like to put our stories on top of the story that's already being given to us.
I have to say, like, to me, like, Julianne, this is sort of a peak gossip fodder story. And I don't think we sort of do the gossip thing on the show, but we're interested in the machinery of it, the reasons that people are sort of so fixated on a story like this one. Because to me, it feels like the Bennifer story sort of is basically shorthand for like how you feel about love, or how you feel about, who gets to find the right one, or the idea of like the one that got away. It's like an entry point into all those conversations that people have on a day-to-day basis. And you get to take all those conversations and then project them, onto figures like Ben and Jen. What do you make of our obsession with this story? Like the fever pitch sort of conversation level that there is every single time that, they return to each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like, we transpose our own feelings about ourselves and our own relationships and love onto celebrity. And
Yeah.
they, in particular, they felt unfinished. Like, they broke up possibly because of a bad movie. It's unclear.
Because of Geely, it got really bad
Yes.
reviews. That's one of the rumors that they broke up, because it's like Ben is like on this incredible trajectory in his career, and then he does Geely, and then we go, yikes, where did it all go? Anyway, continue.
It's
Sorry.
donezo. Yes. So, I think we were rooting for them because we thought that maybe in our lives we could have this classic fairy tale romance. And that's what it was. It was entirely a fairy tale. And we all know that J.Lo loves like her princess narratives.
Yeah.
And, Affleck is like the dirtbag prince who like rolls back through. So it was it was a fairy tale that we could believe in.
It was a fairy tale we could believe in. Okay, so to the end of that fairy tale, Jennifer Lopez put out that album and 2 films this year about how Ben Affleck is the love of her life. I want you guys to hear a scene from the documentary This Is Me Now with Jen and Ben.
This book is a book that Ben gave me on our first Christmas back together. It is every letter and every email that we wrote to each other. It became like our Bible, and we just left it there in the studio. And people would thumb through it. They're like, can we look at it? I was like, look at it.
I came to the house one day, and there was like, she had told me the musicians are coming, this great producer, Roger, blah, blah, blah. And then I went down there, and my book that I had given her was down there. She was like, I've been reading, and this is the kind of inspiration I've been showing them the book. I was like, you've been showing all the musicians all those letters that, and they were like, yeah, we call you Pen Affleck. And I was like, oh my God.
We call you Pen Affleck. I've never heard a more exasperated person in my life than in that very particular clip. Julianne, what's your read on this documentary and maybe the mismatch of energy, let's say, when it comes to Ben and Jen there?
I mean, when I watched that documentary very closely when it dropped, it was pretty clear that this relationship had an end date precisely because of that. He like, how are you gonna give your love letters to your writing team? It's just such a violation of privacy, and it shows this fundamental mismatch between Ben Affleck is famous, but he likes to not be famous, and J.Lo is famous and loves being famous.
Yeah.
And so that was always just not gonna work out.
B, what's your read on this? Because we have to remember, like, in the early 2000s, I guess in the 90s and the 2000s, J.Lo spent a lot of time positioning herself as a sort of rom-com queen, right? She still sort of presents herself as this, like, hopeless, dedicated romantic. Ben does not have the same kind of public posture. How would you describe what Ben is like in this relationship?
So Ben is very much the guy who is like, I love you, but I just want to be with you. She's like, there may have been a conversation, and this is just me imagining, maybe Ben hits her up and it's like, hey, big head, how's it going? Haven't seen you in a while. I've got this yacht. Do you want to hang out? And I feel like the first thing Jennifer did was like call her team to be like, all right, so styling and photography and like how should this look and how should this move and how should this, not saying she doesn't love him, but saying like
it's a consideration for her. Yeah.
There's a bigger consideration for her. And I'm not saying he's a perfect person, but it feels like in this relationship we see where he's considering her,
Yeah.
she's considering him, and how it fits in the machine of J-Lo.
Well, so like Julianne, to that end, that's why I wanted to talk about this story. I wanted to talk about this story because it's a very useful window, I think, into our relationship with celebrity. And maybe I'll get your thoughts on like what you think the Bennifer story tells us about our relationship to celebrity and what it says about the business of being a celebrity.
I think that, it does actually illuminate and be, I think, what you said about, basically how J-Lo was thinking about like how it's going to look on the gram is very astute. And I think it says that we're in this era, which is so different from when they first got together, where everything, all of our lives are documented in public, and you can be a celebrity if you are just a rando somewhere.
Yeah,
exactly.
And people curate their lives. And so I think that there was something relatable about that, but it also kind of showed us the consequences of doing that.
I buy that. I buy that completely. B, maybe last word to you here. J-Lo filed for divorce, reportedly without an attorney, on the day of their 2-year wedding anniversary. There is this thing that sort of happens after celebrities file for divorce, which is like this PR war seems to play out where,
Exactly.
different parties are giving different quotes to different outlets. And it can kind of feel like you're being spun just like as a reader of these sort of organizations. What do you think, what do you make of the PR war between the two of them as they sort of try to frame the narrative around their divorce?
Well, I think it goes back into kind of what I was saying before about even just the genesis of Bennifer 2.0 and how that might have come about, because you see Jennifer's machine working. You don't really see Ben's side or any sources coming out with anything, but Jennifer's side has a lot to say. And I think, strategy, it's interesting. You never know if kind of being the first one out the gate to kind of shape the narrative is the right thing to do. But I also see people critiquing certain things coming out of this narrative, like you knew this man was not one of those guys that wants to be all out there, so why are you surprised? Or a source says he's got a darkness to him, and then the next story is he's not in touch with her kids. Well, maybe that's the darkness you spoke about. So it's kind of like, is your strategy really doing what it's supposed to do? But I will say, for me personally, Jennifer wins, and I'll tell you why Jennifer wins. Because we were joking about love being dead before we got live, before we came on.
Yeah.
Jennifer's going to show us love's not dead. Something about women like Jennifer, Halle Berry, some of these women who are like, I'm going to go for love no matter what. I'm going to end it when it's no longer serving me, and I'm going to dip my hand back in the beehive and get stung trying to reach for that honey. She's going to do it again. She's going to find the new love of her life, and we're going to be caught up in it. So,
you know what? I can't wait for that documentary. I will be there. I will be seated, and I will be watching. In the meantime, B and Julianne, I got to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's so fun.
It's been a great time. Thank you. B. Quammie is a writer and culture critic in Toronto, and Julianne Escobedo Shepherd is a writer and editor in New York. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. The music that you're hearing right now is from 1975. This track is called EC and is by the German band Neu. They were one of the big names of Krautrock, and look, I'm not going to lie to you, I have not heard of that term. It is a term that is used to describe bands that sprung up in Germany in the 1970s. But I've heard a bunch of the bands that are described in this musical moment. We're talking about Kraftwerk, we're talking about Faust, we're talking about Tangerine Dream. What connects these bands is that they were creating sounds that no one had heard before. They created this bridge from rock from the past with electronic music that we kind of know today. And the bands themselves may not be household names, but they are hugely influential. I'm talking about all these artists from David Bowie to Radiohead to the Red Hot Chili Peppers to Bjork, all of those bands have named Krautrock bands as influences. There's a new book that reminds us that Krautrock's futuristic utopian sound was actually an act of rebellion against Germany's dark political past. Neu Klang, the definitive history of Krautrock, was originally released in Germany a few years back, but it was just translated for a new English edition. Its author, Christoph Dallach, joins me now. Christoph, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Hello.
From Hamburg.
I'm delighted that you're here. Listen, your book begins by looking at the term Krautrock. Many Germans see it as sort of a pejorative that originated in the British press, but others kind of claim that name as a source of pride. How does the term sit with you? How does the term Krautrock sit with you?
It's both. When I grew up, I wasn't familiar with it. When I first heard about it, I didn't like it. It sounded boring, proud, ugly word, and rock mostly for me when I was young was boring. Brian Eno in my book put it beautiful. He said the originate of this term is from the war. The British people, the British used to call Germans Krauts. And Brian Eno says he doesn't like it to this day. But on the other hand, it works. So if you go into a record shop and you go to the section Krautrock, you find Faust, you find Tangerine Dream, and you find Neu. So it sells records, which is great.
Yeah, the idea that it becomes a categorizing sort of title for all these bands and the sound. We're speaking about a musical movement that took root over 50 years ago. Why was it important for you, Christoph, to tell the story of Krautrock?
I just got the idea when I went to a Red Hot Chili Peppers show in 2007 in Hamburg.
Okay.
At the end of the show, they introduced a special guest, said they were happy to have him and how important he was for them. And I thought, oh, wow, and Clapton is coming, I don't know. It was Michael Rother, Michael Rother, as you say, in America or the UK. And Michael Rother was a guy who was in the very early stages of Kraftwerk and later started the band Neu. And Rother came on stage, they played the Neu track Hallo Gallo from the first Neu record, and I was very surprised to see that all the people around me in Hamburg looked at each other and said, who is this guy? What strange guy is it? And he lived in Hamburg, and I think it's strange that one of the few people in German music who had a worldwide influence, nobody knows him in Germany. And I think, oh, I'd love to hear his story. What was it like to do this kind of music? And then from then on, I started to interview all these people.
I like the idea of you sort of doing this as an attempt sort of archival work, like the idea that the Red Hot Chili Peppers come to Hamburg and they say, we're going to bring out an important German musician, and then people in Hamburg where you are don't necessarily know who they bring out. That must have been, in a way, kind of a startling moment. Let's talk about the book. Neu Klang is so much more than a book about just a couple of cool bands. It's really like the story of the German experience after World War II. What did you learn about that experience from speaking to all those musicians?
I learned a lot, and it wasn't the plan, to be honest. And the first one I approached was Elamin Schmidt, the founder of the band Can. He lives in France with his wife. And I visited him, and we spent like 5 days just talking. And I realized that growing up in the 50s and 60s was surreal, to put it in a positive way. Germany was, in my words, a dark place back then. I mean, the Second World War had ended, but in teachers, in schools, and policemen, and so on, there were all the old Nazis. And what you call ethnification, it just didn't work. They put all the people from the Third Reich, a lot of them, into the young Germany. And the people who I talked to in my book, they're the ones who opposed, who in school said, no, it's just wrong what you say. Who asked the parents, say, what did you do in the war? Please tell me. How could you do this? And their reaction was to oppose to all this and say, no, it's wrong. I learned what a strange place Germany must have been in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, this is not a history that I was familiar with before reading your work. The idea that that young people in Germany in the 50s and 60s were sort of turning to their parents, were turning to their teachers, turning to authority figures around them and saying, wait a minute, what was your part in the war? And to that end, you sort of dedicate this entire chapter to the year 1968, which was a time of mass student protests in Germany. How did those events shape the movement of Krautrock?
In my position, I think it's 68. The time after war ended. A new Germany was born in 68.
Oh, wow.
It's when a young generation just stood up and through all the arts, with paintings and literature and even political young people said it's over and we have to start new now. It was a turbulent time, but it's in the end, it's where a new generation just said, no, it's over now, we take over. Where the old dark Germany ended and a new, still strange, but very different Germany started. And very important is that a lot of these musicians told me they had to start from the point zero. They didn't want any past. They just wanted to create something new, start at zero, which is a very interesting idea.
I'm really fascinated by the idea. First of all, the idea that you said that the war didn't end in 1945; it ended in Germany in 1968. The idea, like, that's really when young people said, "Okay, we are sort of overthrowing older ideologies and taking over." And then that shows up in the art in the moment, the art that you sort of create in that moment. But these musicians were not just rejecting Germany's past; they were also at the time rejecting sort of American and British rock conceptions that they'd grown up with. Why was that important to them at this moment?
Now, they weren't so much rejecting it, and it was not rejecting in the sense that they didn't like it. It was more rejected in it's not our history. We have to form our own history. They liked the Stones, the Beatles, and so on, but they just didn't feel the blues. They had a different history. And like Michael Rother from Neu says, I just stopped listening to music at all.
Oh, wow.
I just wanted to create something new. So the basis to create something new is to reject the past. Not saying it's bad, just saying it's not ours.
I want us to just hear a little bit more of what we're talking about here. This is Can. This song is called Vitamin C, and if it sounds familiar, the song came out in 1971, but it's turned up in so many movies and TV shows, including Paul Thomas Anderson's Inherent Vice. It was in Euphoria. It was in this new Benedict Cumberbatch show called Eric. Listen, Christoph, I want to talk about the fact that Krautrock was born from a very specific time and place in reaction to a specific political moment. Why do you think it still holds so much appeal for people across generations around the world?
Because I think it still sounds unique. There's no band that sounds like Can. No one sounds like Neu. No one sounds like, some people sound like Tangerine Dream, but they're just copying them. But if you listen to all these musicians, you hear originals. You know that they created something from zero that still is unique. And a band like Can, if you really listen to Can and all the albums, they still sound fresh. That's because makes sense that you use them in soundtracks these days. It's still a very unique music, and I think a lot of young people realize it. And the good thing about this time is that you get the records, get the music, just it's 2 clicks away on the internet. You hear about Can, you read about Can, you Google it, and then you can listen to this music. And I think a lot of people say, wow, this is special.
We got maybe about a minute left here. We're in this moment right now where far-right ideologies are on the rise, both in North America and Europe. How do you think the story of Krautrock sits with you right now, given the political climate that we're in?
I think it's very actual because Krautrock is a sound of freedom. It's not thinking about your own country and distancing yourself from the others. Just do it together. Find something and working with others. And it's really pure freedom. Freedom of expression. Freedom of emotion. Krautrock really is opposed to anything dark and excluding. It's including. We do something new. We do it together. We do it fresh.
Christoph, I got a lot out of this conversation. I really appreciate it. I think there's a lot of clues as to where to look for using music and art to sort of find new pathways to freedom and to expression. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks very much.
Of course. Really appreciate
very much for having me.
Of course. Christoph Dallach is a writer based in Hamburg, Germany. His book, Neu Klang, The Definitive History of Krautrock, is now available in English. That is it for the show today. Remember, you can listen to any episode of the show anytime you like, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram. We are at Commotion CBC. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. And you know what? We'll see you tomorrow.